Hi, I'm McInnes, and today I'm going to take a trip to learn all about the fisheries and aquaculture industry. Salmon from Scotland is eaten all over the world. Scottish salmon businesses invest over £60 million a year on innovative ways of protecting salmon from disease and improving the way that salmon are reared. Almost all of that money is spent in the Highlands and Islands, creating jobs and opportunities across the area. The first part of my journey has taken me to a river in Sutherland, which is roughly halfway between Inverness and Wick. My guide here is Sean, who is from the local area and studied fishy subjects at Aberdeen University.
Fishery boards protect both the wild fish stocks, but also the communities that rely on the fishing. I can be radio tracking fish one day, electrofishing the next, and out hunting for invasive plants. We know much more about these fish than we have done in previous years. For example, in the 1960s, when they were setting up dams left, right and centre, they didn't think of them as obstacles to fish passage, but now we know better, so we're trying to remove as many barriers as we can where we can. Not necessarily massive great big dams, but even little obstacles such as weirs can have an impact on how these fish are able to get upstream to spawn.
So it sounds like wild salmon really have to work hard to keep going, but what about farmed salmon? The next stop on my trip is a company called Maui, who are the world's biggest farmed salmon producers. Explain to me the life cycle of the salmon from when they're an egg to when they go through the hatchery and out to sea.
So basically we get them in, their eggs, we hold them in the hatchery where they go through a hatching process. They then become alevins, where they have this yolk sac, and once the yolk sac's sealed, they then are ready for first feeding. That's when they move on to the fry stage. From fry, they then move through to par, and then they move on to smolts, so they go through a smoltification, and that is when they're ready to go to sea.
I'm a farm tech here at Leven, so I'm just kind of generally looking after the fish, just looking after their welfare, feeding them, looking after the nets, make sure they're healthy. Especially in the summer, all the kind of algae and things grows in the nets and it stops the oxygen going through, so you change the nets to keep the fish breathing healthier.
So we heard all about the salmon life cycle, but how do we ensure that the salmon we farm are kept nice and healthy? The last stage of my trip is to go back to Inverness to speak to the team at FishVet. They're the ones who make sure that the fish that are farmed are as healthy as possible and that we minimise their impact on the environment.
So what we do is environmental monitoring. We go to fish farms, we take samples from the seabed, we go through them looking for what we call pollution indicator species. Near the cages, you'll see lots and lots of the same thing and not much diversity in life. As you move further away from the cages, you tend to find species that aren't as pollution tolerant as some of the others. So the cleaner the water, the higher diversity of life.
Now that I know all about how the experts ensure that fish farming doesn't damage the environment, I want to know how we make sure that the fish inside the farms are healthy.
The main goal is to take really thin sections of tissue so that we can analyse them, and we use a variety of different colourings and stains so that we can look for different things that might be present in the tissues. These are all really quite common procedures that you would do, not just in aquaculture, but in the health service, in all veterinary industries.
Wow, there was a lot to take in today, and we've barely scratched the surface of the aquaculture industry in Scotland. We've concentrated on salmon in this film, but trout and halibut are among other kinds of fish being farmed in the Highlands and Islands. With wild fish threatened by overfishing, this industry has a big part to play in making sure there's enough fish for us to eat. So it looks like there's going to be some pretty interesting jobs in this sector for a long time.